1,000 puts at the 700 level on Tesla, which suggests that for the rest of the week, we're going to see some amazing fireworks. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. And if you'd like better ideas for investing and trading on a daily basis, please join us on Patreon. I think you'll enjoy the information that you derive from it on a daily basis. So I decided to do kind of an auto visit today, only because the hope was that we would finish this show and then hopefully what I'm about to say doesn't happen, and then you'll forget about the show quickly and nobody will be the wiser. What's going on is that I chose that title for the name of the show today because there's something really strange going on with Tesla right now. Basically, in the trading environment of options, this week the stock sort of dropped from the 734 neighborhood to about 712 in one day. And there wasn't any obvious news. CNBC put out something about China sales being down, but that's been refuted already. So it's interesting that they chose to review something that was totally shown to not really be a big variable. So the question mark is, well, kind of what's going on with these numbers? So what had happened was that I was really planning to just do a show where we looked at the fact that right now there are actually over 30,000 puts at the 720 level on Tesla. And usually what I do when we're reviewing how options might affect the trading for the week, I kind of look 50 to 75 points up and 50 to 70 points down in terms of the stock price to try to just get a general feel for what the market makers are trying to do currently and where they're going to probably take the stock for the rest of that week. By the way, just a reminder, this is a copyrighted telecast, and any rebroadcast or use of any of the material here is prohibited without permission. So basically, I thought my work was done today because just like last week, Tesla's stock price seems to be settled in just below 750, but above 720. So when we talked about this last Friday, I thought that this would actually be pretty much what one might expect to occur. So to my surprise this week, I'm sitting there saying, oh, I've got this nailed in terms of how to do an analysis of this situation. And I just looked at the 720 puts and said to myself, oh, this is a no-brainer. It's just like last week, there are a bunch of 720 puts, i.e. 30,000 plus of them. And that number will likely shape the willingness of market makers to drop the stock at or below $720 a share for the week. Well, the problem with this is it kind of didn't make any sense because it had already gone to 714. So it seemed like the market makers were comfortable with a Tesla falling below 720. And that kind of made no sense to me because when you have 30,000 puts there, as soon as it drops below 720, those puts become profitable. And particular, if it even goes to a 700, that would actually be devastatingly profitable for the folks on the 720 puts that we've discussed. So as I thought about it after seeing it happen over the last couple of days, what seemed to come to mind is the importance of 700. So as we've reviewed in the past, all the 00s and the 50s are a very big deal. So why is that? Well, there's something called odd lots and even lots. So anytime you're on the zeros, those tend to be even lots of whatever you're doing. And so those tend to be very big numbers, the 00 point for any stock, and especially Tesla. So after reviewing sort of this general concept, the next question was, well, how do you review what's going on here? Because if you look, you'll notice that at 720, at 740, at 750, there are all these places where there are above 5,000 units of calls that are going on. And the question is, well, how are things going to work here? Well, if you really want to make this confusing, I just, for the heck of it, decided to glance at 700 and see what's going on. And oh my gosh. So take a look at the 720, 700 calls and the 700 puts on Tesla. What you'll find is that at 700, there are 45,000 calls and there are 81,000 puts at 700 for this week. So the general idea here is that I believe, despite these huge number of puts that were out there for Tesla, that, you know, there's no doubt that this stock should finish up above 700 this week. Now, it is currently Tuesday. This show obviously is things are gonna play out by Friday this week, and we'll find out exactly what the deal is. But right now, I have to say that, wow, between 720, the 30,000 puts there, and the 81,000 puts at the 700 level, you know, you then add up the calls the other direction. But there's another variable here, is you have to see what the dollar value of the situation is. So I just think that because of how these puts and calls are working out right at 700, a close of the week somewhere right at 700 seems likely, only because if you could get that stock above or below 700 by $1 or $2, you end up wiping out 120,000 calls and puts all at the same time, which is ghastly because of all the money that would be lost by the folks on the call side and on the put side in this situation, but more like the call side, with the put people making some money off the 720s that are out there. So the other question that's popping up is, how do people, or why do people bother accumulating huge numbers of puts and calls when it's 30 points out of the money? And the answer is, yes, there are multiple answers. One answer could be that, hey, this is just a hedge on the rest of their position. Another answer could be, they know something we don't know. And one of those things they may know is they have an ability to move the stock to where they want in time to make this a very profitable trade. A third option is that all these people are crazy, not likely, but possible. But I think what this portends or sets up is one of the craziest weeks of trading probably in the last 5 years for Tesla, especially because with 81,000 puts out there, that's actually the biggest number I've ever seen for Tesla. When I saw the 45,000 calls at 700, I was like, whoa, that's a big number. Then I cycled down. Now, we have people at different tiers of investing on the show, so I just wanted to briefly remind you how you find the calls and puts so you can look at the option string in this fashion. First, I just say go to Yahoo and type in Tesla, TSLA. Then middle of the page, look down and you'll see something that says options. Click on that. Then start scrolling down and scroll all the way down till you get to where the stock price is now at about 740-ish. And then it'll have all these, there's a whole line of information there. And if you look at the guide from the top of the page, you can determine, you know, open interest, a number of interests open, number of options that traded today. There's all this information that's being shared there. So what I find interesting, or there's a bunch of stuff you could look at, but a lot of people really work hard on charts to determine where things are going and why. I think the charting is excellent. Any information you can garner that might give you better technique with your trading is always good. The next question then is sort of what do you do with this information? Well, the charts are a historical process for how you process information relative to a stock. The key to it, though, is that it's great information. It takes time to get a good command of it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. The problem is that charts tend to work a lot like how long stocks work. Those charts tend to work over a longer period of time. And when you're looking at a trading situation that's 3 days long, it sometimes will work. I've found about 10% of the time, but 90% of the time you put a lot of time in, and the yield from that in terms of information you can use for better investing and trading, I think is kind of a waste. And understand the ratios of puts and calls, how many raw out there, how much money is involved. Those are real numbers that change all the time. And I believe it's harder to manipulate. You can manipulate anything you want, including these, but it's a little harder to manipulate shares and therefore make a killing by wiping people out on options that could go anywhere and go quickly versus watching how people are charting, and then you program your computer to sort of kill people who are good chartists because your algorithms can easily consume all that information and just jam those who are trying to use that as their guide. So I think, this is a barn burner week. I believe based on how the money is moving, there are a lot of call option folks that get wiped out with a stock price back to 700 by the end of this week. And obviously we get that pop up on Monday, usually after we see a pin. But this pin at 700 is billions of dollars that are at stake. And in theory, it should not be able to drop to that level, particularly because of the 30,000 puts at the 720 level that will become very profitable. But again, we've seen strange things happen with Tesla. And I believe that this is going to be one of those weeks where we see stuff happen where it's like, I don't believe this happened, but it did happen. Just like on Monday when you saw the stock price on generally good news on Tesla drop down to 712, it felt to me like it was a test case. The one other note that I wanted to add to this is some of the things related to the 0-0 rule. Now, there are a lot of people that have stop losses at 700 based on not wanting to lose all their money. And the issue is if they can get it just below 700, the stock will likely head to the high 680s-ish. And I think for those of you who are long, it's going to be a buying opportunity. But the reason why it gets there is also critical, which is that there are a lot of stop losses set at that number. And by the time every one of those stop losses is executed, it's executed at the next opportunity to trade, not at that particular number. So therefore, if you can just get that stock over 700 to 699, 698, 685 is the next place it'll end up. And the people who are trying to wipe out those 81,000 calls will make a killing. The 81,000 puts will come into play, but there's a whole bunch of calls like the 45,000s, like the calls that are at 20s. There's just all this money to be made by tanking the stock. So I hope I'm wrong in terms of what's going to happen, but I definitely think that based on just glance at the numbers, this looks like kind of a bloodbath of epic proportions that's being prepared to happen. So then the final thing I wanted to cover today, and part of the reason we sort of did a direct to YouTube piece, is that anytime you're working in a field, sort of the amazing things that happen, it's in your best interest to take time to understand what happened and then do some work with it. So one of the things I wanted to note is that I wanted to ask you to look up something called long-term capital management. So the story of the firm is that, and this is kind of the story of Wall Street right now, is that what you usually do is get some academics along with some people who are excellent traders and have a lot of experience on Wall Street. So that firm had at least one Nobel laureate, Black, from the Black-Scholes model, which we use to price options, and John Merriweather, famous trader from Wall Street, and they got this firm together And usually there's capital allocated to you based on the fundamentals of the trading technology you'll be using or investing technology you'll be using as a process to get a win. And usually you include really famous folks because when they're the ones who created the models we use, their likelihood of success is actually pretty high. In this case, I chose this because one of the things that happened is you had them with a whole bunch of money that they applied to investing slash trading in a unique way. And the core logic was that with the core sort of engineering ideas that were driving that firm, they were set up to make a great deal of money. One of the problems that popped up is that on the flip side of that, there were several hedge funds got together and decided they were going to A, identify the trading positions of these guys, and B, destroy them. And in the process of destroying that firm and long-term capital management, the way they were positioned around the world in positions meant that the US government and all the other major economies had to get together to unwind this firm and shut it down. Otherwise, it would have tanked the global economy. And so those folks who ganged up to wipe that firm out were effective in what they did, made a lot of money, and they almost tanked the financial system as they were doing it. So when I was watching Tesla's stock price drop from 735 in minutes down to 712, I was just thinking to myself, wow, one of the possibilities that happened there was, somebody may have been apt or someone else, whose covenants were in jeopardy of being violated. And they may have been able to violate them on those covenants. And now they have to liquidate their entire position. And now after they've been liquidated by an attack by some other firms, the stock price can rise again to where it should be because the attack that brought it down was over, was one of the many sort of possibilities that I thought lurked there. So a subtopic for this show is a Snoop Doggy Dogg song that I really like, where the beginning of the line or the song starts and it says, if it ain't one thing, it's a MF nother. So my point there being that there are a lot of variables, a lot of different constituencies that are very powerful, smart people, and they can move, tank, or boost stocks at will because they have money, smarts, and technique. And they therefore have all the ingredients for really making big moves and dents. So part of the reason why I wanted you to learn about long-term capital is that the more trading situations you've seen or felt out to understand, the easier it is when you're trading because you could just sit there and go, oh, we've seen this before. And as things move as they shouldn't, you'd be a lot more comfortable jumping in and doing a trade here. So in general, it's really fun to be right and know everything that's going on and be able to highlight your command of the environment. There's also something I want to call being suspicious. And what I mean by suspicion here is just to say, hey, if there's a ton of people who for some reason are focused on that 700 and they have huge amounts of money that are at stake relative to it, I think the possibility that a lot of money is going to be made and lost there is huge and should be noted as we're going into this. So I hope that I'm wrong. I'm hoping, hey, Tesla gets to 750, 770 this week. We're all happy everything's working great. But I have to say, this is not an investing situation. It's a trading situation. And there are a lot of traders making money by playing with Tesla's stock price. And I think this week is going to be one of the biggest plays because they're running out of time to make the money they've been making on Tesla immediately. Once we get the new numbers, once new plants open, all of a sudden there's an avalanche that will run over people who are trying to short or play around with Tesla's stock price from all of that news positively influencing the stock. So it's a lot easier on this side of Tesla's future to play than on the other side of October into Tesla's future in terms of what's going to happen. So I think you should put on your seatbelt because this is going to be a very interesting episode. Please, I wanted to note to you that we appreciate constructive commentary. We also want to make sure you're armed to understand what might occur. That way you can make moves easier in the space. If the stock does tank like I think it, I'm thinking it at least 60, 70% it could, that's an awesome buying opportunity, I believe, for those smart folks who've been picking up options in the process. So we'll see how this goes. Any rate, just a reminder, we have a few SpaceX shares. Also wanted to note that this is a copyrighted broadcast. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe, and your comments are greatly appreciated. We next move into our health tips. As usual, don't forget, prior to lovemaking, no more than a light salad. Also wanted to encourage you to consider a 5-2 or one of the other diets as a way to improve your both mental and physical health. The third one that I'd like to review again, because I was part of the sleep research facility at Stanford, is to encourage you to try to go to bed and wake up at the same time every day for a couple of weeks. And I think it gets your body into a certain rhythm that will allow you to stay healthier and sleep better, because your body knows a rhythm that you're going to maintain to sleep better. That comes from Dr. Dement at Stanford Sleep Clinic, one of the most famous sleep researchers in the world, and just want to highly recommend that one to you. So finally, we'd like to say tschüss German, au revoir French, Lehithro, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi, Strazich, Russian, Ni Hao Ma, Chinese, Konbanwa, Japanese, Ni Hao, Namaste, Hindi, good day, our friends in Australia, Hey Do, our friends in Sweden, Arrivederci, Italian with all that great food but still fattening, and Salam, our friends that are Muslim. And in Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Have a great day. Bye for now, and best of luck as we close out the trading week.